You're sitting at a dinner table. People are laughing, the food is warm, the room is bright, but inside you? A sudden silence. Like you're watching yourself from a distance, smiling, nodding, pretending to belong. Someone compliments your new job. You say, thanks. But something in you whispers, if they knew the full story, they wouldn't clap so loud. You carry it like a second skin, that one failure you never forgave yourself for, that version of you that still feels like a fraud. You've changed your clothes, your city, maybe even your name. But the past? It's still wearing you. Have you ever felt like your history is stealing your present? That no matter how far you run, the echo of who you were keeps showing up first? So here's the question. What if the key to becoming who you are is to burn who you were? Think of a snake. When it can't shed its old skin, it dies. Not because the world attacks it, but because it outgrows itself and stays trapped inside. Humans don't shed skin. We shed identities. At least, we're supposed to. But most of us are walking around in outdated versions of who we used to be. We don't evolve. We accumulate. Labels, failures, heartbreaks. Like emotional barnacles, we let them grow until we can't move forward without dragging the past behind us. This isn't drama. It's biology. It's psychology. And yes, it's philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche called it a curse. He believed that humans suffer not because we're weak, but because we remember too much. Unlike animals, we can't simply let go. A dog makes a mistake and 5 minutes later it's wagging its tail. We mess up once, and we carry the shame for years, even decades. Nietzsche said this obsession with memory, with history, is like swallowing poison daily and wondering why we feel sick. He called it a danger disguised as wisdom, because the past pretends to teach us lessons, but too often it just chains us to regret. And he made a bold claim: to live fully, to create yourself anew, you must master the art of active forgetting. Not denial, not ignorance, but the radical decision to let go of what no longer serves your growth, to cut the rope tied to your old self, to step away from the grave of who you were, without apology. He wasn't talking about forgetting facts. He was talking about shedding identities. And he was right. Because here's the trap. If you define yourself by your past pain, you'll keep building your future around it. So let me ask you again, what would your life look like if you finally stopped remembering who hurt you and started remembering who you want to become? It always begins quietly, not with a breakdown, not with some dramatic collapse, but with a question that doesn't go away. Is this really who I want to be? It shows up in the mirror, in the silence after a party, in the pause between texts, a flicker of discomfort that no achievement, no affirmation, no distraction can fully erase. You start to notice it in the smallest things. You laugh, but it feels flat. You scroll, but nothing lands. You succeed, but the joy doesn't stick. That's not depression. That's not failure. That's awakening. It's the prelude to the burn. Nietzsche didn't say, change your life overnight. He said, become who you are. And becoming isn't loud. It doesn't come from the outside. It starts with noticing what no longer feels true. This is what modern psychology calls cognitive dissonance, the quiet war between your outer life and your inner truth. And when that gap grows too wide, the fire begins to whisper. At first it sounds like doubt, then like restlessness, then like grief. Not grief for someone else, grief for yourself, the self you abandoned to keep things running. But now, you can't pretend anymore. The job, the relationship, the personality, all of it starts to feel like borrowed clothes. You want something that fits, something that breathes. You don't know what it looks like yet, but you're ready. Ready to question the rules, ready to confront the past, ready to step into the flame, not to be destroyed, but to be revealed. This is the stillness before the burn, not weakness, not failure, but readiness. The kind that doesn't need permission, only honesty. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the need to perform? Not because anyone asked you to, but because something inside whispered, "Don't show them the real you. They won't like it." So you smile. You agree. You play nice. But every gesture is filtered. Every response is edited. Every emotion goes through a silent screening process. That, right there, is the mask. And here's the brutal truth. The longer you wear it, the harder it is to remember who you were before you put it on. Let's start with something subtle. You laugh at jokes that don't amuse you. You say yes when every cell in your body screams no. You keep the peace at work, at family dinners, even in relationships, because you've been taught that nice equals safe. But safe for who? Most people don't wear masks to deceive. They wear them to survive. As children, we learn quickly which versions of ourselves earn praise and which ones bring punishment or shame. Jung called it the persona, the socially acceptable face we present to the world. It's not fake, it's strategic. But over time, strategy becomes identity, and identity becomes prison. Here's how it shows up. You become the fixer, the high achiever, the always fine friend. Your worth gets tied to being liked, being needed, being agreeable. But inside, something starts to ache. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a slow erosion of aliveness, like you're watching your own life from backstage. And then comes the cost. Chronic fatigue that rest can't cure. Relationships that feel performative. Goals that look good on paper but feel hollow in your chest. You start to wonder, if everyone likes the version of me I invented, what happens if I take it off? Will anyone still stay? This is the first fire Nietzsche points us toward. The fire of shedding. Not just roles, but illusions. Not just behaviors, but identities that calcified in the name of survival. Because before you can burn your past, you must confront the persona you built to survive it. Ask yourself, what part of you is real? And what part was rehearsed so many times it became instinct? Maybe the mask isn't lying to others. Maybe it's lying to you. And maybe the first act of freedom is daring to remove it. You're alone in your room, scrolling. You see a photo from 3 years ago. You pause, not because of how you looked, but because of how it felt. You remember exactly who you were that day, what you hoped, what you hid, what you hated about yourself but smiled through anyway. And without warning, it's back. That version of you swore you buried. The one who made mistakes, tolerated less, believed less, settled more. It returns not as a thought, but as a voice. A whisper. You haven't changed. You're just pretending better. But what if that voice isn't memory at all? What if it's a trap? That voice? It's not truth. It's not insight. It's attachment. Nietzsche warned us. Memory can be more prison than mirror. We confuse remembering with wisdom. But often, it's just repetition. We relive what hurt, what failed, what embarrassed us, thinking we're learning. But really, we're looping. The past becomes not a place we came from, but a lens we wear. And over time, we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we were. This is what modern psychology calls schema. Patterns from past experiences that distort how we read the present. You get feedback at work, you hear, "You're not good enough." Someone cancels plans, you feel abandoned. Your partner is quiet, you brace for rejection. But is it really them? Or is it you? Seeing today through the lens of a yesterday you never healed. Nietzsche called it resentment, a soul stuck in a loop of injury. It doesn't rage, it haunts. It turns memory into identity, pain into personality, until even your dreams wear chains. And here's the twist. You think you're protecting yourself by remembering, but you're actually reliving. The past becomes your comfort zone. Not because it's safe, but because it's familiar. Ask yourself, what part of your past are you loyal to, even though it betrays you? What version of yourself keeps pulling you back, not out of love, but out of habit? And who are you when no one is watching? When you're not defending your scars or retelling the same old pain? Until you burn that, no amount of change will feel real. Because if the ghost of who you were keeps showing up in every room, you're not living. You're relapsing. and it's time to stop feeding the ghost. You wake up one morning and realize you're exhausted, not tired from lack of sleep, tired of yourself, of the overthinking, of the pretending, of carrying every version of you that disappointed someone. And there it is, the moment the fire begins. Not with rage, not with drama, with fatigue. You no longer want to be understood. You want to be free. Nietzsche called this threshold the moment of becoming, not becoming someone else, but unbecoming everyone you thought you had to be. But here's the danger. Fire doesn't discriminate. When you light the match, you don't get to choose what memories burn and which ones stay. You risk losing comfort. You risk losing people. You risk losing the identity you spent years protecting. And that's why most people don't burn their past. They recycle it. They rebrand their pain as personality. They turn trauma into content. They call their anxiety just who I am. But Nietzsche would say, if you keep decorating the cage, you'll forget it's a prison. So what does burning actually look like? It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like grieving the version of you who people liked, but who never liked themselves. It looks like not explaining why you're changing. Because healing is not a performance. And freedom has no audience. Modern psychology supports this. Studies show that identity reconstruction, the act of consciously reshaping who you are, is tied to increased self-efficacy, emotional regulation, and long-term motivation. But first, you must stop negotiating with your history. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become without asking for permission, so light the match, and let what no longer serves you go up in smoke. After the fire there is silence, and in that silence a question. Who am I, now that I'm no longer trying to be who I was? Most people fear the burn because they mistake destruction for death. But in Nietzsche's world, and in your life, this is not death. This is space. And space is sacred. It is the breath after heartbreak, the pause after quitting, the quiet after you finally say, no more. But space doesn't stay empty. It demands a new author. So here's where the real work begins. Not fixing, not improving, creating. And to create a new self, you need new questions. Not, what do people expect from me? But, what do I expect from myself without shame? Not, how can I be more liked? But, how can I become someone I would admire? Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the slow, sacred process of integrating what was hidden into who you are, of becoming whole, not by erasing the past, but by rewriting your relationship with it. And here's where Nietzsche's will to power returns. Because it's not about dominance, it's about authorship. The radical act of saying, I choose, I define, I rebuild. Maybe your new identity isn't loud, maybe it's not impressive, maybe it's just peaceful, and maybe that's the revolution. You're not here to become someone impressive, you're here to become someone integrated, someone who doesn't perform for love, someone who doesn't beg the past for closure, someone who can sit with their scars and still feel whole. So the real question isn't, who am I now? It's, who do I want to be now that I know I'm allowed? Every day, you're faced with a quiet choice. You can repeat the story, or you can set it on fire. One feels familiar, the other feels like jumping off a cliff. But here's the twist. Only one of them leads to freedom. You don't need another journal prompt. You don't need one more YouTube video telling you you're enough. You need a match, a real internal flame. The kind that doesn't beg for applause, only clarity. Because you already know what's not working. You already know what part of you is outdated. The question is, will you finally choose to let it go? Nietzsche didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few who were willing to suffer honestly, to walk through fire and come out shaped, not scarred. He believed becoming yourself wasn't a right. It was a rebellion. So here's your rebellion. For 7 days, choose one identity you're ready to burn. Maybe it's the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the cynic. Name it. Then each morning, ask yourself, what would I do today if I no longer believed I had to be that? Don't overthink it. Don't explain it. Just act from the future you're building, not the past you survived. Then come back. Share in the comments. One word for the part of you that's gone. Let's make burning a ritual. Let's make becoming a practice. You are not your history. You are your decision to rise from it. And if today becomes the day you choose to burn, then today is the first day you are truly alive. There is a moment, quiet but irreversible, when you stop waiting. Not for closure, not for approval, not even for understanding. You just stop. You no longer ask the past to explain itself. You no longer beg your old self to be better. You no longer plead with the world to make space for who you're becoming. And in that stillness you understand what Nietzsche meant by, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." But the why isn't handed to you. It doesn't come from a TED Talk or a quote on Instagram. It comes from fire. It comes from choosing to sit in the discomfort of not knowing who you are anymore and not rushing to fix it. This is where most people quit. They relapse into roles. They rebuild the same masks. They say, "This is just who I am," when really it's just who they were allowed to be. But the ones who stay, the ones who breathe through the ashes, they awaken, not all at once, not in lightning, but in subtle ways. The way you speak more slowly, but with more truth. The way you stop apologizing for being quiet. The way you no longer feel guilty for wanting more. This is not motivation. This is metamorphosis. Carl Jung called this the integration of the shadow. When the parts of you that were once buried, your rage, your fear, your shame, are no longer threats. They become tools, fuel, fire. And that's the twist. What once made you feel broken now makes you whole. You're not here to become someone else. You're here to become someone complete. The part of you that sabotaged relationships, it was just longing to be seen. The voice that kept you small, it was just trying to protect your younger self. You don't kill these parts. You listen. You integrate. You lead. And for the first time, your life stops being a performance and becomes a practice. A practice of living with full permission. No masks. No apologies. No need to explain your fire, because anyone who's walked through their own flames will never fear yours again. Remember the beginning, that flicker of discomfort, that question you couldn't shake. What if I'm not who they think I am? Now return to it, but feel the difference. You're not asking out of fear anymore. You're asking out of awareness. There's no applause, no fireworks, just a quieter heartbeat, a lighter breath. Maybe you haven't burned everything yet. Maybe the past still lingers like smoke in your clothes. That's okay. Transformation isn't a performance, it's a posture. And the truth is, you're already further than you think. Because most people wait their whole lives for permission to begin again. But you started, you questioned, you stood in the fire. And even if you don't have all the answers, you now hold something rarer than clarity. You hold choice. So maybe there's nothing more you need to become. No more healing to prove. No more past to explain. Maybe the real revolution is to whisper to yourself, quietly, honestly, I am not who I was. I am not who they need me to be. I am who I decide to become next. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If something in this found you, if even a single line echoed what you've been carrying, write one word in the comments. Not a sentence, not a story, just one word. The part of you that you're ready to burn. Let it be a ritual. Let it be a release. Because you're not alone in this fire. We're all carrying ashes. And maybe someone out there is waiting to see your word so they know it's safe to let go of theirs. So if you're ready, type it, post it, walk away. The fire will do the rest.